Hey friends, hey. As we head toward our 200th episode, I realize Stitch Please is more than a podcast. It's an archive, a resource, a community, a place for learning, exploration, and good cheer. It's highly rated across platforms and nominated for awards, and it's always centered on Black women, girls, and femmes in sewing, and always provides a space to hear, learn from, and be inspired by Black creatives. To keep this unique project going, we need your help to create the change we want to see. Throughout September, listen to the podcast's first ever live So Black series. Recorded with a live studio audience in Atlanta, Georgia, I talk with sewing and quilting all-stars E. Bond, Sara Bond, Nikki Griffin, Rashida Coleman Hale, Naomi Johnson, Sean Kimber, Bianca Springer, and Sara Trail. These amazing conversations culminate in a most special 200th episode. But the party doesn't stop there. Enter the 200th episode giveaway with weekly prizes from AccuQuilt, including a grand prize Go Big electric cutter. It's a great chance to get your stitch together. You can enter the giveaway and listen to the podcast at blackwomenstitch.org. Share our 200th episode posts on your social media. You can also donate through our tax-deductible ActBlue site or sign up for Patreon, which is getting first access to some fun new projects in September. Join us as we celebrate 200 episodes of Stitch Please, the weekly podcast centering Black women, girls, and femmes in sewing, celebrating those who stitch, create, and liberate. Thank you. Hello, Stitchers. Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolfork. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Black Women Stitch and the Stitch Please podcast is grateful for all the support that made So Black possible. Special thanks to our underwriters, Spoonflower. Thanks also to Moda for generous sponsorship. Thank you, Bernina, for your wonderful support. Thank you also to Amtrak for partnering with us. Special thanks to those who shared resources to equip the space. This includes AccuQuilt, Aurifil, Crimson Tate, So Easy, Ruby Star Society, Free Spirit Fabrics, Kai Scissors. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Special thanks to Focusrite for making the live recording possible through the donation of an audio interface, the Focusrite 18i8. Thanks to the Bridge PAI for the initial funding, and thanks also to the Modern Quilt Guild for their generous support. Thank you all so much for making this possible. Hey friends, hey, welcome. I'm Lisa Woolfork and this is the Stitch Please podcast. And as I say every week, this is a very special episode because this episode is being recorded at So Black, an affinity space at the MQG QuiltCon in Atlanta, Georgia. I am in a space that is so filled with so much beautiful Blackness and joy, and I am so glad to be here, and I am so grateful to be. So we are here at a panel discussion, Sewing for the Culture, and we have some wonderful representations of that, including to my left, Nikki Griffin of Atlanta Sewing Style. Y'all can clap. It's a studio audience, y'all. Come on. Let's get some studio noise up in here. I don't have money for sound effects, so please clap. To my immediate right, we have Sara Trail, who is the founder of the Social Justice Sewing Academy. And to her right, we have Bianca Springer. Say it, Bianca. Please say it, Bianca, the Bahamian way, right? We're going to say it, Bianca. Bianca is the author of Represent, an embroidery book with 10 colorful projects, hundreds of designs. I took her class last night. Bianca also has been a very beautiful supporter. All of these folks here have been a supporter of Black Women Stitch since Black Women Stitch became an idea. And last night I went to Bianca's hand stitching class, and she had created for me a custom template for myself for me to stitch for my, work, Find Yourself. It had words like podcast, stitch, liberation, Black women. It was just like, it was the things that mean something to me. And that is an example of the kind of care I think that we can have in community. So we're going to start with some really, I think, when you think about the phrase for the culture, what does that mean to you? Because even that phrase for the culture is something that we say as a way to kind of call in all that is the beauty of Blackness. Audre Lorde described it as Blackfulness. Like, imagine mindfulness, but with Blackness. Blackfulness. That's what I feel here right now. And that's kind of what I get when I think about for the culture. I'm going to start with you since your book is represent, and it does have designs that are very much Black-centered, Black-forward, designed for and about us. Tell us about how you got started with that and how for the culture shows up in your work.
Well, this book was born out of an experience where I was incapacitated and needing to continue to be creative while I was recovering from an injury. And the fastest, quickest way for me to create was with embroidery. So I did a little Amazon search, just did the bestsellers, sent them to my house, and they were white authors stitching white themes. And because I couldn't get up and move, I stitched them, but I modified them to look like me, look like my kids, to represent my story. And I was dissatisfied, but, in that moment, it was just the way life was. It was me just saying, this is what it means to be a Black person in a white creative space. And it was very normalized in that moment. And so I didn't buck the system. I just did what I did. I switched it up for me. A couple years later, similar injury, opposite knee. And again, I was like, okay, I need to do something. Ordered the books again from the same authors, new releases from them, but the content was the same. And I was frustrated with that. I sent those books back and then started creating designs on my own. What did I want to see? What did my kids, what would they get excited about? And so I started tweaking designs for embroidery for myself. And then I had an opportunity to go to Quilt Market, which is an industry event for fabric companies and designers in Houston. And I had won a contest with Moda earlier that year. And it was a bag design contest. And I was carrying that bag when I walked past C&T Publishing. And they stopped and we started chatting. I had done a little work with them, but I hadn't met any representative in person. So I just sat and started chatting with them. And someone said, your look is artistic. I see your Instagram. You are creative. I think you have a book in you. They set me up with a meeting the next day. I had no plan. I didn't have an idea for a book, but I sat down with the acquisitions editor, and she said, she's like, what do you want to write? What craft books do you enjoy stitching from? And I said, I'm going to be 100% with you right now. And I took the books off their shelves and I said, this book I will never stitch. This book I will never buy. And I just pulled them all. And I'm like, none of these are me. These are not written for me. They don't center me. I opened a book and I'm like, this little girl does not look like my daughter. And if I brought this home and said, honey, let's stitch this, I'm communicating to her the value and worth of that person.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's right.
That's not what I want to tell her. I want her to pick up a book from start. She doesn't have to change it unless it's a creative decision. You shouldn't have to change the nose. You shouldn't have to struggle to get hair texture. You shouldn't have all of that stuff. I was like, I'm not going to pay to be disrespected by anyone.
Light it up.
And I had nothing to lose. No one was, I wasn't, they say not all good money, all money is good money.
All money ain't good money.
So I wasn't about to pander and try to get a book deal on a concept that would fit the market. I was telling them the market doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And to their credit, she was like, I hear you, help us. We want the book you have in you. We want to tell the story you want to tell. And so from that, creating for the culture for me was about filling a void, but doing it in a way that brings comfort. It wasn't, I'm like, I want fun designs. I want happiness. I want when someone picks up this book to feel like, oh, I am seen. And this is fun. I want to stitch it. Yes, that's 700 French knots on that portrait, but that's a sister with a fire afro, and I'm going to do it. And so it's about just stepping into that space and bringing other people in, telling the stories I think are important to us, doing it in a way that says, if this is my only shot, I've said something, and doing it in a way that says, here's what we have to say. I hope you realize we want it. We are responding to it. So continue, publishers, fabric designers, continue to see us, continue to utilize our talents, and let us speak to our community.
Yes, that's beautiful. And what I love is the movement from what might come from an individual, like an idea. Like when I created Black Women Stitch, I built it because I needed it.
Yes.
I needed it. Sarah, I'm going to turn to you now because I'm feeling lectury, and I'm going to stop myself before everybody leaves. How did that go for you because I know you've been in the industry, although you're young, you've been in the industry since you were designing like patterns and books when you were like 12, right? And you've been going to shows and producing things. When you pivoted from like working as a child to as an adult being on the other end, so you have benefited from the arts program as a young person, and you took your studies and the work that you did in school and kind of pulled together this beautiful project. Tell me, like, in what ways do you think Social Justice Sewing Academy also does sewing for the culture?
I would say SJSA does sewing for the culture in the ways that we really do it with anyone. And I think people love to talk about like kids from concentrated communities of disadvantaged, or always framing kids in this deficit model of like disenfranchised kids. And it's like, chill on that rhetoric. Like, I can't stand the disempowering way that often white spaces talk about our Black and brown kids. And it's like, whether, y'all want to donate or whatever, you still don't need to frame them in that. Like, I've been in workshops in Baltimore and hearing firsthand from those kids how dilapidated the city is and how everyone talks about the city, and the kids are like, what about us? Like, we're here and we're seen, and like we need to be heard. And I think that often rhetoric plays such an important part in kids' feelings of autonomy, their self-agency, their efficacy. And like, I think when we say do it for the culture, it's more than just the creation of like making art that we care about, but it's really like, it's uplifting Blackness. It's promoting Blackness.
Yes.
It's, in all forms of Blackness. The Blackness with homeboy who's sagging his pants with his Gucci boxers.
Exactly.
And it's Blackness who's fitting all the modes of respectability politics.
Exactly.
And it's not making, yucking someone's yum. And, like, regardless of the Ebonics, or it's regardless of if they want to stitch cuss words in their block, we're going to let them stitch cuss words in their block. And while their teacher might say, that's not okay, if that's their lived experience and they're talking about racism and this is how they want to promote it, then let them do that. And I think it's no rules, no limits, all gas, no brekes when it comes to sewing. And that's really, I think, how SJSA does it for the culture.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I love it. And I am, as you know, I'm here for all of it. Nikki Griffin from Atlanta Sewing Style and Sewing My Style.
So gas, no breaks.
All gas, no breaks. Talk about all gas, no breaks. Nikki Griffin can do it all. She organizes this wonderful sewing community. She makes bras and teaches bra making online. She just had a Jeanuary session where you made jeans in January, and she provided the kits. And because she didn't talk to me first, the bags that she made for the January, she cut on a doggone Cricut and pressed herself. And I was like, oh, girl, why don't you call me before you start projects like this? Because that's not the way. Because I could have made it. Yeah, I could have made it easy for you. But that's okay. We'll talk about it next year. We will do sublimation in a different episode. We'll talk about sublimation printing in a different episode because everyone needs to have sublimation printer. It'll change your life. Nikki, we are so glad and welcome. Tell me, what do you hear? What do you mean when you pull together Atlanta Sewing Style? I've seen some beautiful photo shoots that you have done. They'll go to, I think you might have gone, was it the one we did with the cars where you all went out in the kind of the 50s or 20s? Well, she does amazing work. Tell us, what does sewing for the culture mean for Atlanta Sewing Style?
I think it's more DNA and less intention, because how it started, when I started teaching, I stopped sewing for 20 years. And then when I came back, I said, okay, let me teach just to get my juices going and everything. I started teaching kids. That lasted for about 6 months. And I was teaching at a white-owned studio where it was, white customers. But every Wednesday, they had a open sewing night. And maybe 5 of us would show up. So when I was there, we're in mixed company. The energy is just kind of bland. But I noticed when we got together, we were at one table, the energy shifted.
To where you were?
If all of us were at one table and everybody else was around, the energy kind of shifted. So I started feeling that. And everyone was from Atlanta. So it was just this natural happening that came together. And what we did, I said, well, let's just do this all the time. Because it's a DNA match.
That's so
I always say it's our ancestral craft. Yeah. Everybody's grandmother, auntie, great-grandmother, right? It's passed down to you. So when we were together at this white studio, it was just different. So we had to do it. So I think it was very divinely ordered. I'll give you a really quick example of how it really.
Black Women Stitch is happy to celebrate the 200th episode of the Stitch Please podcast with AccuQuilt. It's our birthday, but thanks to AccuQuilt, we're giving gifts. All September, we're counting down to 200 episodes on October 4th. Every week, we're giving away one AccuQuilt Go Me fabric starter set with a bonus Quilt As You Go bag making kit. We also have a grand prize of a Go Big electric fabric cutter starter set. We'll announce the winner when the 200th episode drops. Visit Black Women Stitch and socials to enter. If you are new to AccuQuilt and are thinking about investing in their system, the Ready, Set, Go bundle is your best value. Ready, Set, Go provides everything you need to get started. AccuQuilt Go Cutter, the 8-inch cube to create 72 blocks, a die to easily cut multiple strips, squares, and diamonds, and a pattern book. Purchased separately, this bundle would cost almost $1,000, but during September, you can get it for 20% off with our code SPPodcast200. The best part is at any time, you can upgrade your Go Cutter to the fantastic Go Big, which is what I have, where the AccuQuilt magic can happen at the touch of a button. Links are in the show notes. Discount code SPPodcast200 is good for September 2023.
Divinely ordered. I'll give you a really quick example of how it really hit me that this was not going to be my life. I'm teaching about 8 people, 8 white women, and I'm teaching. I'm the expert in the room, and when I'm having a conversation just like this with, one of the students that's sitting next to me, and we're talking about where we lived. And I lived in a community called Avondale Estates. Still do. And another woman on the other end of the table, her contribution to that conversation was, oh, you live in Avondale Estates? Yeah, I do. That was the last community that was allowed to sell their houses to colored people. I did not stutter and make that up. Those were her exact words. And I said, everyone in the class was silent. Like, did she really say that? But my thought was different. Yeah, bitch, you said that. Okay? And, yeah, things are going to be different now. I think the next week,
Did she come
I
back?
made this shirt. This fabric was flying out the door at that shop. They were coming, oh, we need the faces, the crowded faces. And I sat in that shop one night when I wasn't busy and made this shirt. And I wore it all the time with the few days left that I taught. And I told the owner, I said, I'm one of your instructors. I don't know who's signing up for the classes, but if you see her name on one of my classes, you either remove her or I'm not teaching the class. And I think she took a little further and told the woman she wasn't welcome at all. Okay, fine. Atlanta Sewing Style kind of took off after that because I didn't want to be in that environment that I had to watch what I said or even be concerned about what I said. So Atlanta Sewing Style was born, and I think everyone felt the same thing. When we just put the call out, we had about 20 women show up. Our theme was spring dresses. And we made spring dresses, and we went out. We just picked a location, and we hired a photographer, and had so much fun. And we were at home. Lisa, when you talk about the experience you had sewing with the whites and when you found your lane, man, what the exhale feels like.
Yes,
right?
Yes. I've kind of felt like when I create, like, you know, when I look around at you all being here, I'm like, I feel like I wasted so much time. I wasted so much time. I really feel like I wasted so much time. I spent decades of my life being the lonely only. And when I learned to quilt, I learned to quilt at a local quilt shop. I went to a technical college as well to study sewing as well on the side. All of my like formal training was with white folks. You know, the person I apprenticed with a quilter, she was a white woman. All of these different things that I did was all very white. And I realized that between my work life and then this was between my hobby, my free time, it was more of the same, like reproducing the same kind of conditions and, you know, generating the same outcomes. Then I started looking for Black sewing stuff. I said, you know what, because I can't do this. I refuse to sew with anybody who doesn't believe my children's lives have value. Never again, never. I don't do sewing with the whites. And I looked through and I saw Social Justice Sewing Academy. And I was like, that's a place that I could belong. And I bet I could create something. I could build what I needed. And that's what sewing for the culture means for me.
I want to say this. Thank you. This is how this community works. I've had so much success. Thank you, Father. I've had so much success in my sewing brand. I would not be a bra maker if it wasn't for Black Women Stitch. I would not know about Sarah's organization if it wasn't for Black Women Stitch. I was doing my little thing in Atlanta, but God had something different for me and others like me. There was this global movement. Black Women Stitch is not a brand. There was just this global movement that said, there is a community out there because it's different. The creativity is different. I was doing my thing with the whites. I love that term.
I coined it, sewing with the whites. Sewing with the whites. That's what I don't do anymore.
Right. Yeah. And we sew in color, y'all.
Yeah.
We sew in color. I was reading an article the other day, and it said, fashion was created. Africans made it art. I might have murdered it a little bit, but you get the point. So that's what this community does also. So sewing for the culture means that to me. We're sewing into each other. There's so much more. I would probably just be still teaching, but it was just so much more being introduced to this world. And that's because of Lisa.
Again, I built what I needed. And it turns out other people needed it too. And that feels really great. So Black is made possible by some amazing people on the Black Women Stitch team. Christina Gifford, Janelle Velasco, Latrice Sampson Richards, Naomi P. Johnson, Shauna Jefferson, Jill Bates-Moore, Nikki Griffin, Coco Springer, Alicia Turlington, and Adrian Dent. And in full Snoop Dogg style, I'd like to thank myself for pulling this together and believing in me. Let's give it up for Lisa Woolford. And if you want to find out what's happening next, follow Black Women Stitch on TikTok and Instagram and sign up for our email list. Check out the Stitch Please podcast with new episodes every Wednesday, including episodes from QuiltCon coming out soon. I want to talk about the community building. And one of the things that I think is important, that we imagine sewing and quilting as a way to build mutual bonding, creates opportunities for collaboration, and helps you kind of get a sense of love and exploration. Can you talk about how any ways that you have facilitated community building through your craft?
I would say community really stitches together in the sense of letting the young people, have the microphone. There's a quote that really resonates from Arundhati Roy that says, "There's no such thing as the voiceless, only the deliberately silenced or the preferably unheard." And I think often all our Black and brown kids are deliberately silenced, told to be quiet by the whites, or systems of oppression, power, privilege, intersectionality. Like we can go into the framework behind it, but really they're often deliberately silenced, and more often than not, they're deliberately ignored. And I think that, being a kid, in a school system, you go to school systems that, don't listen to things you care about or things you want, and resource and funding. And I think really in giving them an opportunity to make art through fabric, it's an opportunity where it's whatever you care about is going to be what you want to do. And it's coming from someone who's been indoctrinated in the sewing culture. I started sewing, in professional classes from the age of 6. Seam ripper was my best friend. I did the 1/4 inch. And if it was any bit bigger than the 1/4 inch, I picked it out. My paper piece seams always matched. My foundation pieces always matched. I did it the right way.
Yes.
I had to do it the white way. And that alone was, it needed to look like the pattern of the class I was going to do.
Right.
And I think in creating SJSA, I was there is going to be no right way. There's going to be no white way. There's going to be just what we want to do.
Yes.
It's we're going the opposite. We're going to have a class with no seam rippers. We're going to have a class with no rules. We're going to have a class with no patterns. We're going to have a class with no expectation of what you're here to create. We're just going to let you just be, you'll just explore, and feel the fabric. And I think in allowing kids to have that as the intersection and really the introduction to sewing, it creates a very different experience. Because I've taught the kids at Joann's, I've taught the kids at Michael's, I've done we're going to make PJs, I've taught prom dresses, tote bags, aprons, you name it. But when you're making aprons, there's this is what it's supposed to look like. And if yours is jacked up, you're going to know yours is jacked up because your apron doesn't look right.
Right, exactly.
But when you're doing SGSA classes, there is no prototype of what it's supposed to look like. You get to be that. And if you don't like it, don't glue it down.
Right.
It's not applique is forgiving.
Yes.
Applique is flexible. And when you start with art quilt techniques as opposed to the regimented rules of what sewing can often be, you're really unlearning and decolonizing, even the we're starting with G's Bin style. There is no rules.
No rules.
Do it your own way.
That's right.
It's we're not starting with how sewing. If you Google sewing, it's rules. It's YouTube. It's this is what you do. This is what you need. When you're unlearning and saying it's fabric, you're getting ready to cut and glue. It's a collage. Start with what you want, and then if you want to learn more, you can learn the rules. You can learn the techniques. No one's discrediting that. But making that point of entry somewhere where there's no judgment, there's no rules, and there's no hierarchy of whose is right and whose is not, really makes it a very accepting. It's a different space, and it's a different culture, and it's a different atmosphere that really can get cultivated. And when kids feel comfortable and welcomed in an art forum, it's like the tenfold. You can see them just. It's you can spark that mind that's then gonna go build the neighborhood down, burn it down.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You can be that spark.
And the thing I love what you said, what often the quilting has all these rules. We talk about the quilt police because people really do try to police oh, this is uneven, or this is not right, or this is not the right set of colors, or it doesn't fit. It's all the regimentation. And I think that sometimes when folks learn in an environment that is not flexible, or home ec in school, and the many complaints I hear from folks about home ec, and it becomes important that this is a rule-less space and that they can just be. The idea of being just being able to be, to just exist, that is enough, that you are enough as you are, as you think. When you say you don't have a seam ripper, I took a class with Sarah Bond yesterday, and it was paper piecing class. And in it, she said, well, I don't know about you guys, but I think perfection is a tool of oppression. And I was like, it is. It is. And scaring everybody around me as I almost jumped out of my seat and going, that's right. And so, wait, I'm going to get back to my sewing. I will not get on what other things are tools of oppression. I will continue with my sewing. But I'm going to ask the panel the question I ask at the end of every episode. The slogan of the Stitch Please podcast is that we will help you get your stitch together. Each one of you, I want you to think about it because I'm going to come back to you. Bianca, How are you going to help us what would be your advice to us in this space to get our stitch together? To help us, what would you offer to help us get our stitch together?
Particularly at QuiltCon as a garment maker. I know I've seen a lot of garment makers from the sewing community here. I think consider a new technique, consider implementing a skill, consider a fabric you hadn't thought of in a new way. So step outside of that garment making framework and see what quilty elements you can start to bring into your work, because they are endless, they are wonderful. And by doing so as a garment maker, I found in this space, there are quilters who haven't considered garment making. And if you expand what you can do by exploring what quilting has to offer and bring that into your garment making, you're also expanding the possibility for the quilter who's not considered the other side.
Yes.
And so just be open, and it's so fun. I'm not a quilter. I've made 3 quilts in my life, but I'm a garment maker, and I'm integrating those techniques. I'm teaching a class on them tomorrow, and I love it. I love the exploration and fun and creativity I've found in implementing quilting techniques. And it's been fun to hear quilters venture into garment making because they've seen that. So there's a wonderful, like, the wall between garment making and quilting seems to be rigid, but it's not. It's a wavy line. So cross that line, and and you'll see some new possibilities.
Great. Thank you so much. And that reminds me, we have the So Black Sewing Show, which is an online project that we're doing. And we have partnered with Free Spirit Ruby Star and Spoonflower. And what we've done is we've connected them with Black sewing influencers, including Aronica Cole, who was here yesterday, the Corny Rainbow, Julian Collins, Terrence, who else? Nikki. Am I forgetting somebody? I feel like I am.
I don't know. You might.
I'm so sorry if I've forgotten somebody. Charge it to my head and not my heart. But what we are doing is taking quilting fabrics and wearing them in order to show quilters how easy it is to make clothes with the fabrics you already know and love. Yes. And so we've been emphasizing and highlighting Rashida Coleman Hale and Jen Hewitt for Ruby Star. We've worked with E. Bonds Fabrics and Janine LaCour from Spoonflower. Thank you. Oh, Sarah, how are you going to help us get our stitch together?
I would just say we just have to do Sankofa. Reach one, teach one. And if y'all don't have a mentor, DM me, because I've got mad kids who just want a mentally healthy, with the means, grandparent to just give back. And the amount of young people that just don't have that is outstanding. And if it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter where you live. Like, we've got high school kids that are like, hey, we did a workshop. Can you teach me how to sew? And it's like, there's not, 50 me's, and we don't need 50 me's because we've got a community.
Right.
But it's like, besides your grandkids, if you can't say someone that you're helping mentor, like, that's a shame. Like, and I'd really just challenge and push us all. And if not, you can make an Instagram post if there's any young person, and it doesn't even have to be about financial. It's just about time. It's about checking in. And it's about, coming them in a space with no judgment to really just give back. Because beyond, our family, and, I know my grandparents taught me, it's different if someone else that's not even your blood pours into you. And that's, I think, often what means a lot with these kids getting their blocks embroidered by the greater community. Someone who doesn't know me cares about me. And that level of affirmation alone can go a long way. So if anyone doesn't have a young person, and I mean young person, they could be high school, they could be mentored, they could be a guy from Nigeria who's never been to America. Like, they can be anyone, but there's always someone that needs help. And if you don't know them, then let someone put you in touch with someone who needs the help. So by all means, reach out.
I love it. And thank you so much for bringing him to us today. We spoke with Uzoma Samuel, and it's so wonderful. He had these canvases that were rolled up, and he unrolled them, and everybody gasped. Everybody was just stunned and taken aback. And his first quilt, the first quilt he's ever made, is downstairs. You will not believe this is anybody's first quilt. So, Nikki, how are you going to help us get our stitch together?
I think I want to continue on Bianca's message, because I was thinking about how we've continued to build this community. I never knew there was so many Black quilters, because I'm not a quilter. I got invited to the Modern Quilt Guild, the local Modern Quilt Guild. Somebody found me and said, will you come and speak to us? I'm like, about what? And I went, and they wanted to learn how to take measurements. And, you know, that wall you talk about, I would say that wall is clear. Because there's so much that we have in common. But if you do have a local Modern Quilt Guild in your area, check it out. There's some Black women there, Black men. There's some Black people in that organization, and continue to build that. You will thank yourself later, because it's, you know, just like this, all the Black people that we're celebrating who are quilters and have these classes and everything. So that's what I would say.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, y'all. Thank you so much. We are so grateful to our guests. Can we get a round of applause for Nikki, Bianca, and Sara? You've been listening to the Stitch Please podcast, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. We appreciate you supporting us by listening to the podcast. If you'd like to reach out to us with questions, you can contact us at blackwomenstitch@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us financially, you can do that by supporting us on Patreon, Patreon. And you can find Black Women Stitch there in the Patreon directory. And for as little as $2 a month, you can help support the project with things like editing, transcripts, and other things to strengthen the podcast. And finally, if financial support is not something you can do right now, you can really, really help the podcast by rating it and reviewing it anywhere you listen to podcasts that allows you to review them. So I know that not all podcast directories or services allow for reviews, but for those who do, for those that have like a star rating or just ask for a few comments, if you could share those comments and say nice things about us at the Stitch Please podcast, that is incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. Come back next week and we'll help you get your stitch together.